So it's interesting that probably half of those people think that power comes from someplace outside of us, and the other half think it's something we wield against others, hit people over the head with. It has to do with government, it has to do with politics, it has to do with money, resources. And I think the word power over the years has just become a bad word. And yet, I don't think it has anything to do with true power. And as it relates to our 12 powers, and power being one of these 12 powers, it is totally, totally different. Power has to do with what's inside of us, who we are, what we are. And it has to do with the source, that is God, that is peace, that is love. It's something that we cultivate. It's an inner attribute that's all about how we govern ourselves. It has nothing to do with other people. Though, the more powerful we are, the more power we cultivate within ourselves, the more we know the source of our power, and we embrace that power, and we have a relationship with the source of that power, the more people feel true power. You all know those people who walk in the room, and you instantly know that person has something special. And they don't have to say it, they don't have to tell you, they don't have to hit you over the head with it. You just know. I've always watched people like that. I've always been a people watcher, and there are people that I knew instantly when they walked in the room, I could look at them and I could say, I want what they have. I want what they have. And they were always the quietest, the most peaceful, I would say in many ways successful in their lives, but that their success was not always the same thing. It wasn't always about money. I mean, a lot of them did have quite a bit of money, but it wasn't about their money. They didn't come from their money. They didn't talk about their money. They didn't use it as their power over people. I've been in relationships where people use their money as power. It was never that. But they were comfortable in their own skin. They knew who they were. They were generous of heart. They were generous with their ideas, generous with their time, very humble. They appeared solid, and yet not hard at all. Able to be vulnerable. They seem to attract attention without it being loud. I liked being around those type of people. I always wanted to be that type of person, and it took work for me to get there. A lot of internal work over the years, over the decades. Here in Unity as one of the 12 powers, we define power as the ability to command authority over our thoughts, words, and actions. To be powerful is to be masterful over yourself, not others. Over yourself. If you're masterful over yourself, you never have to worry about others. What they do, what they say, what they think. Self-mastery is power. self-mastery. To be able to be in your thoughts but not have your thoughts control you. To be in your feelings and not have your feelings control you. To be very, very self-aware, but still be clear about what it is you are here to do, to say, to not say, to express at any given moment. That's power. To be able to be with what is without fighting, without wishing it weren't so. Knowing that whatever it is you need to deal with what is right here, right here, right here, right here, right here. That's power. Some of the most powerful people in the world are not the faces that come up when people talk about power. Certainly not the people in that video. Mother Teresa was powerful. Tiny little woman. Tiny little woman. But what she knew was what the source of her being was. She knew what she was here for. She knew what mattered. She had an active relationship with God that governed everything she did. I don't know, she might have been feisty, I don't know. Was never around her. Didn't know her. Haven't read that much about her, but what I do know is she was powerful. Gandhi. Powerful. Not physically imposing in the least, yet powerful. Those are people I think about when I think about true power. So if you're thinking about the source of your being, what do you think of? That's why I think it's important. I talk often about we need to know what is our understanding of God. Who is your God? And do you really believe that's your source? And if you do, how does that govern your life? In Unity, we talk about the Christ principle. And Jesus, the Christ, is the example of that, the highest example of that. And so the Christ principle is the ideal man. Jesus was the ideal man. That's how we talk about him. The great example, not the great exception. And so as we embrace the Christ principle as part of who we are and what we are, because in Unity, that's part of our philosophy, that we are the Christ principle. And we are all at varying degrees in how we express that and embrace that. So it's there within you. Yes, you have the power of power. You have all of the 12 powers. All of us do, but all of us are in a different place with expressing that, with embracing that. So your variation of power may be an abomination of power, the kind of power the people in that video were talking about. But that's your version of power, and it may be completely out of alignment with power that is born of the Christ principle. But you still have power. A lot of people say, I don't have faith. You do have faith. It just means you're expressing it at a very low level. So we all have power. But where do you believe it comes from? And how do you express it in the world? How much time do you even think about that? Or do you even? Have you ever? And are you willing to think of yourself as a person of power. I think that's the first hurdle. Am I powerful? Am I willing to say that? For a long time, I would not. Didn't think it was possible. And for most of my young life, I was not, because I was governed by everything outside of me. That's what I allowed to happen. And in my relationships, people had power over me. I allowed that. My 20s, I was a classic doormat. A big doormat. Compromised myself in relationships all the time. Not just intimate relationships, but friendships. If you could even call them that. If you could even call them that. I didn't know who I was. Everything I did was dictated by my relationships with other people. And I've told you before, then I just got tired. I was tired of people, of allowing people to take advantage of me. Because people can only do what you allow them to do. So if you're going to lay down and be the doormat, then there will be some who walk over you. Again and again and again. And then I knew I had to find something else. That I could not let myself be dictated by what was outside of me. By the world, by circumstances, by people. And when I started to get to know me, and then link my spirituality, my beliefs, to who I was, and that they were not separate. When I started to see myself first as a child of God, and then eventually made my way into evolving into accepting myself as a unique expression of the divine, all of that changed. Because then I had a center from which I lived. I knew what my source was, and my source was not outside of me. It was directly related. It was what I call now my Godness, my divinity, my innate divinity. It changes the game. Then I knew I had power. And no, it wasn't the egotistical power. It was a deeply grounded, peaceful, freeing power. Something that allowed me to move through the world comfortable in my own skin. And with a deep knowingness that whatever showed up, I have something to handle that. And when the human side of me forgot about my innate divinity, something always happened to remind me of that. And then I could flip the switch. So the Apostle Philip is representative of power. And Philip means lover of horses. And for those of you who are familiar with horses, you know that they are powerful animals. And the part of the body associated with power is the tongue, the root of the tongue. The voice, the throat, is considered the seat of our power because you speak things into existence. So power is actually the ability to transmute from one level of consciousness to another, to take an idea, to take something that has been given to you, an inspiration, and move it into manifestation. You can do that through your word, through your voice, the power center, to speak things into existence. So if you're dealing with something that you do not like, you reframe it. You say, I do not want this in my life. You say, I am not that thing. I am nobody's doormat. I'm a child of God, deserving of all love, all peace, all goodness. There are times when I've thought something negative about myself, and most of you have heard this, and all of a sudden you stop and you say, delete, 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 erase, 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 erase. Yes, I thought that then. I no longer want to believe that. I no longer want to accept that in my life. And through your own power, you get to decide that and change it by changing your word and moving through the word. We have that power. That is the power to transmute that from idea into manifestation. And the more I said that I am a child of God and I deserve all love, all goodness, all abundance in my life, those things started to happen. Because as I believe it, then the world responds. That's true dominion. And it changed everything for me. Changed everything. But I had to get to know my source. I had to embrace my source, which is God. That's my source. You have to decide what yours is. What is it? And how do you lean on it? What do you do with it? Your source can truly be something you just think about, read about, talk about, and then do not let it move into your life and how you live. It's up to you. You can talk, 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 read, 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 study, 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 all you want. But if you never live it, if you never harness the power we were given, if you never endeavor to step out as the Christ that you are, your life will stay the same. Whatever issues you have now will be the issues you have later. But you have the power to change that. The question is, are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to do the work? So this is from the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, which is one of the books that we use in Unity to define words metaphysically and to find their meanings and to start using them. So the power center in the throat controls all the vibratory energies of the organism. It is the open door between the formless and the formed worlds of vibrations pertaining to the expression of sound. Every word that goes forth receives its specific character from the power faculty. When Jesus said, "The words that I have spoken unto you are spirit and are life," he meant that through the spoken word, he conveyed an inner spiritual quickening quality that would enter the mind of the recipient and awaken the inactive spirit and life. When the voice has united with the life of the soul, it takes on a sweetness and a depth that one feels and remembers. The voice that lacks this union is unpleasing and superficial. Voice culture may give one-tone brilliancy, but there never was a great singer who lacked the soul contact. Through your voice. No great overcoming work can be done by the disciple without a realization of spiritual power, dominion, mastery. Then do not fear to develop your power and mastery. They are not to be exercised on other people, but on yourself. He that ruleth his spirit is more powerful than he that taketh a city. Alexander the Great cried because there were no more worlds to conquer, yet he had not conquered his own appetite and died a drunkard at the age of 32. Today men are striving to acquire power through money, legislation, and man-made government, and are falling short at every turn because they have not mastered themselves. If you have power, you can master yourself. We think we can change others. We think we can master others. We can't. So you can choose to embody the power that you have, or you can continue to be slapped silly by the world and your circumstances. It does take work. Prayer and meditation, there we are again, prayer and meditation. If you're lacking power in your life and you don't know what to do, sit in the quiet. And if you can't sit in the quiet, you're lacking power somewhere. I told you before, I didn't have power over the quiet when I began. Couldn't sit for 5 silly minutes by myself in the quiet. But the more I sat, the more I got to know the source of my being. And the power came naturally, organically, without me asking for it, without me fighting about it, without me struggling for it. It just showed up and started to pour forth. And my life was different. And at some point, I looked around and I knew that everything had changed because things that used to drive me crazy before no longer drove me crazy. And I would know, I'd be in that situation and say, oh, man, 5 months ago, I would have lost it. And now I can look at it and just go, I'm good. The thing is not a thing. How many things you got that you wish weren't things? So seek your power. Figure out what your source is. How does it govern your life? And how much time are you willing to put in to cultivate self-mastery? Let's take this into meditation. Just close your eyes and breathe. What is the source of your being? What do you call it, if you call it anything? I want you in this moment to embrace that source. Think of it, see it, feel it, whatever it is that you do. What is the source of your being? Just let yourself feel it. And what is it you feel when you think of the source of your being? Is it peace, love, freedom, joy? Gratitude? Do you start to get a little emotional like I do? Because when in the presence of God, I have no words anymore. There's just this feeling of bliss. I'm totally open. I feel totally grounded. I Feel totally at home, totally loved. And now that you're feeling that, I want you to think about one thing in your life, a thing that's just driving you nuts right now. It's frustrating you. Maybe it brings sadness or grief, or you just feel dark and lost. And if you will, allow that presence of God, that source of your being, let it loose upon that thing. See it covering it, feel it surrounding it. All we have to do is let go and let God. Let God have its way with whatever it is that's plaguing you. You don't have to figure out how. You don't have to worry about when. Just surrender it. Open your arms. Open your heart. Unclench your fist. Take a deep breath. And maybe visually have a picture of that divine love, that divine strength, that divine power taking over that thing, reducing it to nothingness. See it happening, feel it happening. What would life be like without that thing? What would life be like if it were all resolved and you were free of that thing? Surrender it. Total surrender. What's it feel like to be free of it? How much lighter would you be? Perhaps you need to do this little exercise again and again and again until you can feel it and know it, that it's done. Have a total assurance that it has worked and it is working through you and as you and in you and for you. So in accordance with our principles, we say yes and thank you for it being done in pure potentiality. For that allows manifestation. Ask and you shall receive. Knock and the door is opened. All you have to do is crack open the door, and love steps through. So we say yes and thank you. Yes and thank you for freedom, for love, for power, for our own power, the source of which is God, the source of which is the Christ principle at work in us and as us. The source of all power, the seat of all power is the light, which is God. And we are thankful for it. So take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Relax. Let your soul be refreshed, your mind be renewed. And so it is, and so it shall be.